Fear is the most powerful prison that never needed walls. It locks people inside their own minds, not because the door is closed, but because they believe it is. Some of you listening to me right now have dreams that have been buried, not because God said no, but because fear whispered, you can't. Fear has talked more people out of their destiny than failure ever has. It has stolen voices that were meant to lead nations, ideas that could have changed generations, and visions that were designed to shake the earth. And the tragedy is this: many of us have allowed fear to sit on the throne of our minds while faith stands outside knocking. You pray, but fear answers first. You plan, but fear edits the blueprint. You start, but fear tells you to stop. But hear me tonight. God has not given you the spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of a sound mind. That means fear is not divine. It is an intruder. It doesn't belong in your spirit. It doesn't belong in your thoughts. And it surely doesn't belong in your future. The problem is not that fear visits you. The problem is that you've made it feel at home. You were never designed to be ruled by fear. You were designed to rule over it. Pause. So the question tonight is not whether fear exists. The question is who's in control. Fear is not a spirit from God. It's a thief that robs you of destiny. Fear doesn't always come shouting. Sometimes it whispers. It whispers in the quiet corners of your mind when you're about to take that bold step, when you finally see the door open, when you feel that spark of courage rising inside you. And just before you move, it speaks, what if you fail? That single question has killed more dreams than rejection, poverty, or loss ever could. Fear doesn't stop time, but it freezes people. It makes brilliant minds question their worth. It makes visionaries bury their ideas. It makes leaders sit in the shadows, watching others live the life they were created to lead. You can see it in their eyes, the hesitation, the doubt, the quiet surrender to what could have been. They wake up every morning breathing, yet deep down, they know they're not truly alive. The truth is, fear disguises itself well. It wears the mask of logic. It says, be realistic. It says, wait until the right time. It says, you're not ready. But what it really means is, stay where you are. Don't move. Don't grow. Fear never attacks your present. It always targets your potential. It doesn't care about who you are right now. It's terrified of who you could become. And here's the painful irony. Most people think they are protecting themselves from failure when, in fact, they are protecting their fear from dying. They feed it every time they avoid a challenge. They strengthen it every time they play it safe. Every maybe later, every I'll try someday, every what if it doesn't work. These are meals that keep fear alive and strong. But fear is a liar. It promises safety, yet it delivers regret. It tells you to avoid pain, but it creates emptiness. It tells you to play small so you won't lose. Yet in doing so, you lose everything that truly matters, your growth, your potential, your purpose. Every time you choose fear, a part of your destiny gets delayed. You don't see it immediately, but the cost is real. The job you never applied for, the book you never wrote, the business you never started, the conversation you never had, the dream you never pursued, all stolen, not by failure, but by fear. Fear robs silently. It doesn't take your house or your car. It takes your voice. It steals your confidence, your boldness, your imagination. It convinces you to trade greatness for comfort. It keeps you rehearsing the past instead of designing the future. And the longer you allow it to stay, the smaller your world becomes. But here's what fear doesn't want you to know. It only survives when you believe its lies. The moment you confront it, it begins to shrink. The moment you act, even trembling, its power starts to fade. Courage doesn't mean the absence of fear. It means you've decided that fear will no longer be the decision maker of your life. Think about it. How many opportunities have you watched pass by because fear convinced you to wait? How many dreams have you paused because fear told you to prepare just a little longer? Sometimes you're not waiting on the right time. The right time is waiting on you. You don't defeat fear by feeling stronger. You defeat it by moving forward anyway. You speak when your voice shakes. You step out when your knees tremble. You try even when doubt screams louder than belief. Because every time you do, fear loses territory. You were not born to be a prisoner of hesitation. You were born to create, to build, to rise, to become. But none of that happens while fear is in control. The moment you decide to stop feeding your fear, your destiny begins to breathe again. So when fear knocks on your door, don't hide, stand up. Look it in the eye. and remind it, you are not my master. You are just an illusion. Because fear doesn't disappear when you run from it. It disappears when you face it. A sound mind is stronger than a fearful heart. Fear will always shout the loudest when your mind is the quietest. It thrives in confusion, feeds on uncertainty, and multiplies in chaos. The moment you lose clarity, fear takes the microphone. But when your mind is sound, when it's stable, clear, and focused, fear loses its audience. Because a sound mind doesn't panic, it perceives. It doesn't run, it reasons. It doesn't surrender, it stands. You see, the battle is never really outside of you. The real war happens in your mind. Before fear control your life, it must first convince your thoughts. It whispers in your imagination until it becomes your reality. That's why some people live in cages without bars, because fear has already won in their minds long before life ever tested them. But a sound mind is the key that unlocks that cage. A sound mind doesn't deny the storm. It simply refuses to drown in it. It sees danger, but it also sees direction. It feels pressure, but it remembers purpose. It acknowledges risk, but it still reaches forward. The difference between those who move forward and those who freeze is not that one feels fear and the other doesn't. It's that one has trained the mind to think beyond emotion. A fearful heart reacts. A sound mind responds. A fearful heart imagines failure. A sound mind plans solutions. A fearful heart looks for what could go wrong. A sound mind searches for what can be done right now. You can't control everything that happens around you, but you can control what you allow to happen within you. The world may be shaking, but your mind can remain steady, because the power of a sound mind is not the absence of fear, it's the presence of control. It's the ability to think clearly when everything around you feels uncertain. Most people fail not because they don't have potential, but because their mind has been hijacked by fear. They've trained their emotions to drive and their logic to sit in the back seat. And wherever fear drives, it always leads to the same destination, regret. But when your mind is sound, you take the wheel back. You make decisions based on vision, not anxiety. You choose action over hesitation. A sound mind speaks truth to fear. It says, I feel you, but you don't define me. It understands that fear is a feeling, not a fact. It separates what's real from what's imagined. That's what keeps leaders calm in crisis, dreamers bold in darkness, and visionaries steady when everyone else is panicking. And maybe that's what you need right now, not a louder heart, but a clearer mind. Because when your mind is clear, your path becomes visible. Fear loses its fog, and suddenly what once felt impossible starts to look manageable. You begin to see options instead of obstacles, lessons instead of losses, progress instead of pain. When your mind is sound, you no longer wait for perfect conditions, you create them. You stop reacting to fear, and you start responding to purpose. You realize that fear is not a wall, it's a warning sign. It's telling you that you're standing close to something significant. And if you can quiet the noise long enough to think, to breathe, to plan, you'll see that beyond that fear lies everything you've been waiting for. Because the truth is, a fearful heart will always try to protect you from pain, but a sound mind will prepare you for power. And power only flows through those who refuse to let fear dictate their decisions. So guard your mind, train it, discipline it, feed it with focus, not fear. Because when your mind is sound, your steps are steady, your spirit is stable, and your destiny becomes unstoppable. And when fear comes knocking again, you'll smile not because it's gone, but because now you know who's really in control. What you tolerate will eventually dominate you. Fear doesn't need permission to stay. It only needs your silence. Every time you ignore it, it grows stronger. Every time you make peace with it, it builds another wall around your potential. What starts as a small hesitation soon becomes a lifestyle of avoidance. One I'll do it later becomes a habit of delay. One compromise becomes a pattern of surrender. And before you know it, fear is no longer visiting, it's living with you. What you allow to stay will learn to rule. You cannot overcome what you keep accommodating. You cannot rise above what you keep excusing. Fear thrives not because it's powerful, but because it's comfortable. It stays because you've made room for it. You've given it space in your mind, time in your thoughts, and authority in your choices. You see, the moment you stop resisting fear, you start reinforcing it. The moment you stop challenging your doubts, they begin to dictate your limits. Fear doesn't come to destroy your potential in one day. It comes to slowly convince you that you don't have any. It doesn't shout. It whispers through small concessions, subtle excuses, and comfortable lies. Every time you say, it's fine, I'll just stay here, fear wins. Every time you say, maybe I'm not ready, fear grows roots. Every time you avoid, postpone, or downplay your potential, fear tightens its grip. And here's the hard truth. Fear never leaves what you tolerate. It only learns how to control it better. The danger of tolerance is that it looks harmless at first. You think you're just being patient, just being careful, just being wise. But in reality, you're training yourself to live beneath your potential. You're teaching your mind to accept limits that were never meant to exist. You're slowly surrendering your authority to something that has no right to it. Fear cannot dominate a person who refuses to give it room. The moment you draw the line and say enough, fear begins to shrink. But as long as you allow it, it will expand into every corner of your life, your decisions, your relationships, your dreams, even your identity. It will disguise itself as logic, humility, or protection. But make no mistake, it's still control. And here's the thing about control. Whatever you don't confront will always control you. You can't conquer fear by negotiating with it. You can't outthink it. You can't outweigh it. You overcome it only when you stop allowing it to decide who you are and what you can do. If you tolerate fear in your choices, it will dictate your direction. If you tolerate fear in your speech, it will silence your voice. If you tolerate fear in your relationships, it will isolate you. It starts small in the words you don't say, the steps you don't take, the risks you don't try, until one day you realize your life has become smaller than your dreams, but you were never designed to live under fear's authority. You were designed to lead your life with courage, to act with conviction, to move with clarity. That means the first step to reclaiming your power is deciding what you will no longer tolerate. You can't wait for courage to show up before you start. Courage is born when you decide that fear has overstayed its welcome. When you say, I've been afraid long enough, I've waited long enough, I've doubted myself long enough, that's when change begins, because what you refuse to tolerate can no longer dominate. So today, ask yourself, what have you been tolerating? What lies have you been believing? What limits have you accepted as normal? The moment you identify them, you begin to weaken their hold. Because fear doesn't lose power when you feel brave. It loses power when you stop giving it permission. And when you finally take that stand, when you stop tolerating what was never meant to control you, that's when your mind becomes free, your heart becomes fierce, and your destiny begins to move again. Faith doesn't deny fear's existence. It denies its authority. Fear will always try to speak first. It will stand at the doorway of every new opportunity and shout, you can't do this. It will remind you of every failure, every weakness, every reason why you should stay where you are. And yet, faith walks right past fear, not because it can't hear it, but because it refuses to let fear have the final word. You see, faith doesn't pretend that fear isn't real. It simply decides that fear doesn't get to decide. It acknowledges the feeling but doesn't surrender to it. Because faith knows something fear will never understand, that courage is not the absence of fear. It's the decision to move forward in spite of it. Fear tells you to stop until everything feels safe. Faith says, start now, even if you're trembling. Fear waits for evidence. Faith acts on conviction. Fear demands certainty. Faith moves with vision. Fear says, what if it doesn't work? Faith answers, but what if it does? The most dangerous thing about fear is not the feeling itself. It's the authority you give it. When fear becomes your decision maker, your life becomes smaller than your potential. You stop reaching, you stop trying, you stop believing. You start living to avoid pain instead of pursuing purpose. But faith, true faith, looks fear in the eye and says, you don't have the right to run my life. Faith doesn't erase fear, it replaces it with focus. When you operate in faith, you start to see beyond the moment. You stop measuring your worth by your worries. You stop defining your future by your failures. You start realizing that fear is only as powerful as the attention you give it. Think about it. Every great thing ever accomplished started with uncertainty. Every invention, every movement, every breakthrough was born out of someone who dared to believe while fear was still present. They didn't wait for fear to leave. They acted while it screamed. Because faith doesn't need fear to disappear. It needs you to decide. Fear says, what if you fall? Faith says, what if you fly? Fear shows you the risk. Faith shows you the reward. Fear magnifies the obstacle. Faith magnifies the opportunity. And the moment you shift that focus, the entire atmosphere of your life begins to change. When you start choosing faith over fear, your language changes. You stop saying, I hope it works, and start saying, I'll make it work. You stop waiting for permission to believe in yourself. You stop living like a victim of circumstance and start acting like the author of your destiny. Faith is not blind optimism. It's intelligent courage. It sees the facts. It feels the fear, but it chooses to keep moving. It's the voice inside that whispers, keep going, when every reason around you says, turn back. It's that unshakable inner knowing that even if you stumble, you'll still be further ahead than if you never tried. When fear leads, your world shrinks. When faith leads, your world expands. Fear confines, faith creates. Fear weakens your voice, faith strengthens your vision. That's why the most powerful people are not those without fear. They're those who refuse to let fear sit on the throne of their choices. So when fear tries to rise in your heart again, don't waste your time arguing with it. Don't try to silence it, outgrow it. Speak louder with your actions, move while afraid, dream while uncertain, walk while trembling. Because every step you take in faith weakens fear's influence over your life. And one day, you'll look back and realize that fear was never the giant you thought it was. It was just a shadow standing in the way of your light. Because faith doesn't remove fear from your path. It teaches you how to walk through it with your head held high. You can't walk by faith while holding hands with fear. Fear and faith cannot share the same space. One will always silence the other. You can't say you believe while still clinging to everything that makes you doubt. You can't move forward while still gripping what keeps you standing still. Life doesn't change because you talk about courage. It changes when you finally let go of the fear that's been anchoring you to your past. Fear will always offer you comfort, but it will never offer you progress. It tells you to stay where it's safe, where nothing can go wrong, where no one can judge you. And for a while, that feels good until you realize that safety has become your prison. Faith, on the other hand, is uncomfortable at first. It pushes you into the unknown, where the road is unclear and the outcome uncertain. But that's exactly where growth begins. You cannot reach new heights while your hands are still tied to old fears. You see, fear wants company. It wants you to hold on to it like a security blanket. It wants to walk beside you, whispering reasons to quit, reasons to wait, reasons to doubt. But faith doesn't need noise. It walks quietly, confidently, knowing that movement itself is power. The moment you take fear's hand, faith has to step back. And the moment you choose faith's hand, fear loses its grip. The truth is, you can't live a bold life with a divided heart. You can't believe in possibility while entertaining limitation. You can't declare change while defending comfort. You have to decide who you're walking with, fear or faith, because both will not lead you to the same destination. Fear walks you in circles. Faith walks you forward. Fear makes you settle. Faith makes you soar. The reason many people feel stuck isn't because they lack ability. It's because they haven't released what's holding them. They're trying to run with weights tied to their legs, trying to dream while still protecting their doubts. But the moment you unclench your hand from fear, you make room to grab hold of your purpose. You can't hold on to both. One must go. Letting go of fear doesn't mean you won't feel afraid. It means you won't obey it anymore. It means when that voice tells you to stop, you take another step. When it says you're not ready, you move anyway. When it says you'll fail, you answer maybe. But at least I'll fail moving forward. Because every time you walk with faith, you weaken fear's hold on your life. And the irony is, fear promises control, but always delivers captivity. It convinces you that holding on keeps you safe, but it only keeps you small. Faith, on the other hand, asks you to release control, but that's how you finally discover freedom. The moment you stop trying to predict the outcome and start trusting the process, you begin to see doors you never knew existed. Walking by faith is not about knowing every step. It's about trusting that each step will lead you somewhere meaningful. Fear needs certainty before it moves. Faith creates certainty by moving. Fear says, show me and I'll believe. Faith says, I'll believe and then I'll see. That's the difference. And that difference changes everything. So, look at your life. Look at the dreams you've delayed, the chances you've ignored, the moments you've paused because fear held your hand too tightly. Ask yourself, how far could I have gone if I had let go sooner? How much more could I have built if I had trusted my strength instead of my fear? You'll realize that most of what you thought was impossible was simply on the other side of release thought, because faith only works when your hands are free, and they can't be free if they're still chained to fear. So let go. Not tomorrow, not someday now, because the path of faith doesn't wait for those who hesitate. It moves for those who are willing to walk, even when their knees tremble, even when their hearts race. You can't walk by faith while holding hands with fear. One of them must let go. And when you finally decide which one you'll release, your destiny will decide which one stays. So now, the question isn't whether fear will show up, it's what you will do when it does. Because fear doesn't disappear for the brave, it just bows to those who keep walking. The difference between those who live in hesitation and those who walk in destiny is not talent, not luck, not opportunity. It's decision. A decision to rise, a decision to move, a decision to no longer let fear sit in the driver's seat of your life. Your future is waiting for you, but it will not wait forever. Somewhere beyond that fear is the version of you the world has been waiting to meet, stronger, wiser, louder, bolder. And the only way to meet that version is to take the step fear told you not to take. Don't let fear write another chapter of your story. Take the pen back. Reclaim your power, stand up and say enough. Walk through the noise, walk through the doubt, walk through the trembling, but walk. Because courage isn't about being fearless, it's about refusing to be controlled by fear any longer. This is your moment to break free, to stop surviving and start becoming, to stop waiting and start moving. The world doesn't need another person who plays it safe. It needs you, fully alive, fully awake, fully unafraid to shine. So go chase what's calling you. Go build what fear said you couldn't. Go live the life that's been whispering your name in silence. Your destiny doesn't belong to fear, it belongs to faith, focus, and fire. May you rise with courage, walk with confidence, and live with unstoppable conviction. Good luck, and thank you.